Laremy Tunsil tore his triceps. His season's done per ESPN, but there's a name with $101 million in career earnings that Adam Peters might be calling right now. In a minute, I'm telling you why Taylor Decker changes everything. John Bates went down too, and Blau's offense loses a key piece exactly when it needs it most. Trey Amos is back, trending toward week 1, but there's a medical detail nobody's talking about. Raise hail. So let's break this down piece by piece, because a lot of people only caught the headline and don't understand the real magnitude of what happened Saturday in Ashburn. Laremy Tunsil, Washington's starting left tackle, suffered a torn triceps during a one-on-one drill against edge rusher Odafe Oweh. Per ESPN's Adam Schefter and confirmed by NFL Network's Mike Garafolo and Steve Wyche, Tunsil tried to stop a bull rush from Oweh. The two locked arms, and Tunsil awkwardly disengaged while immediately grabbing his right arm. He was taken to the medical tent on the spot, then straight inside for evaluation with team trainers. And here's the detail that genuinely turned my stomach when I read it. The player he got hurt against is Odafe Oweh, the same edge rusher Washington signed this offseason on a 4-year, $100 million contract. Washington paid that money so Oweh would do this to opposing offensive lines, not to their own. And yes, I know that sounds like a cruel joke from fate, but that's literally what happened. Sources agree on something that leaves no room for interpretation. Tunsil will need surgery and will miss, at minimum, a significant portion of the 2026 season. Some reports, including CBS Sports, go further and say he could miss most, if not all, of the year. The typical recovery timeline for this kind of injury runs 4 to 7 months per ESPN's report. Do the math with a calendar in hand. If surgery happens this week, best case scenario, Tunsil could return around late December or right around the playoffs if Washington gets there. Realistic scenario, he's out for the entire regular season. Now let's get into context that makes this even more painful. Just 5 months ago, back in March, Washington made Tunsil the highest paid offensive lineman in league history by average annual value, signing him to a 2-year extension worth $60,200,000, averaging $30,100,000 per year. According to both Spotric and Over the Cap, which agree on the figure, the deal includes $61,500,000 guaranteed, a $32,500,000 signing bonus, and in 2026, Tunsil carries a cap hit of $11,905,000 alongside a massive dead cap number of $67,055,000 if Washington ever decided to cut him, which, to be crystal clear, nobody is considering. This is a player the organization just stamped as a franchise cornerstone in ink, and within months the field took him out. Let's get to the question that actually matters to this audience. Who protects Jaden Daniels now? Because let's be honest, if there's one player on this roster Washington can't afford to lose outside of Daniels himself, it's Tunsil. PFF graded him as the 6th best offensive tackle in the league in 2025, allowing just 15 total pressures and 2 sacks the entire season. That's not a rotational lineman, that's an anchor. The first name that stepped onto the field when Tunsil went down was Andrew Wiley, a veteran entering his 4th season with Washington after 6 years with the Kansas City Chiefs, where he won 2 Super Bowls playing guard and right tackle. But here's the real problem with Wiley. In his entire professional career, he's played exactly 5 snaps at left tackle. 5. Putting him there permanently against the NFC East's best edge rushers would be honestly a massive gamble with Daniels' safety. The option gaining steam, per reporting from The Athletic picked up by Yahoo Sports, is Brandon Coleman. Coleman was Washington's starting left tackle as a rookie in 2024. Started 12 games there, and actually re-entered the starting lineup at that position for the final 3 weeks of last year when Tunsil got hurt. And this isn't just reporter speculation anymore. Commanders beat writer Josh Taylor put it plainly this Sunday. Brandon Coleman is the LT for the season. That's the internal read right now. The problem is, Coleman was in the middle of a training camp battle for the starting left guard job against Chris Paul, so this move doesn't just patch one hole, it opens another one at left guard. It's solving one problem by creating a different one, and that's the uncomfortable reality of this roster right now. And then there's the most intriguing option of all, Josh Connerly Jr., last year's first-round pick who played left tackle in college at Oregon. He moved to right tackle last year, specifically because Tunsil occupied the left side. Sliding him back to his natural blindside spot makes real football sense, though it leaves Washington with a fresh hole at right tackle right when Connerly was just getting settled there. But fam, here's the name actually dominating the conversation this Sunday, and that's why it's leading this video, Taylor Decker. 10 full seasons in Detroit, 1 Pro Bowl selection in 2024 when the Lions finished with the conference's best record, and a career that adds up to $101 million in total earnings per PFF figures picked up by Heavy.com. Now, quick clarification here because I'm not going to sell you a fake headline. That number is his career earnings, not a contract offer from Washington yet. Decker asked for his release from Detroit in March after failing to work out a pay cut, and he's still unsigned with any team a month before the regular season kicks off. And the reason this name blew up today goes beyond TUNSIL'S injury. It also matters that Commanders beat writer Josh Taylor said in that same X post where he confirmed Coleman as the plan. He said he would personally call Taylor Decker immediately. That's a reporter with real access saying basically there's no excuse not to make that call, and he's not the only one. ESPN's John Kame wrote that Decker remains free and has ties to people here, pointing directly at Blau and Newmark. When 2 reporters with real organizational access drop the same idea the same weekend, that's not coincidence, that's smoke that usually means fire. Let's talk scheme for a second, because this is what separates real analysis from surface level takes. The left tackle in the zone-based passing scheme that Cliff Kingsbury runs, and that David Blau partially inherits, needs to process fast reads against edge rush, has to handle disguise from edge rushers who show blitz and drop into coverage, and needs the right leverage on that first step to avoid ceding the outside angle against explosive players like Micah Parsons or Brian Burns in the division. Tunsil mastered that read better than almost any tackle in the league. Wiley, being a career guard converted outside, doesn't have that footwork vocabulary installed on the left side yet. Coleman does, because he already lived through those reps in 2024. And that's the real football reason, beyond the easy narrative, why the organization leans toward him as the most sensible short-term option. Decker, for his part, already knows that vocabulary cold after a decade of zone blocking in Detroit, and his 89.3% pass block win rate in 2025, even though it was the second lowest of his career, is still a solid number for a 31-year-old Washington could use as a 1-year bridge. Here's where I come in with my opinion, and I want this on the record with a date attached so you can hold me to it. I believe Washington ends up signing Taylor Decker before August is over. 5-time Pro Bowler across 10 seasons, still sitting on the open market with a direct connection to new offensive coordinator David Blau from their time together in Detroit, where Blau was his backup quarterback for 4 seasons. That's not a minor detail. Decker would know Blau's scheme language from day one. Without needing an adjustment period, Washington simply doesn't have time to give anyone else. There's even a scouting connection here. Assistant General Manager Lance Newmark worked in the Lions front office when Decker came out of the draft in 2016, so he already knows the player firsthand. I could be wrong, and I recognize some reports suggest Decker might be weighing retirement, but if the price and the motivation line up, Adam Peters has the cap space available, and plenty of it, to make him a real offer. Save this take. If by August 30th Washington hasn't signed a veteran, starting caliber tackle, it'll be because they decided to fully trust Coleman, and in that case, this fanbase's anxiety about Daniel's protection is going to be real all preseason long. And now for the most uncomfortable opinion in this whole breakdown, the one that's probably going to bring disagreement in the comments, and that's fine. That's what this space is for. I think Adam Peters made a real risk management mistake when he extended Tunsil this past March, without building a genuine succession plan behind him at the same time. I'm not talking about signing some random backup, I'm talking about investing draft capital or free agent money in a starting caliber tackle who could absorb a hit like this without the whole team lurching into panic mode. Tunsil is 32 years old, he's had injury history at other points in his career, and Washington still put $60,200,000 on the table without a real cushion behind him. When you commit that level of guaranteed money to one man protecting your franchise quarterback, you can't afford a plan B with 5 career snaps at the position. That's simply bad risk planning, an obvious blind spot built into the roster, literally on Daniel's blind side. My prediction, with a date attached, if Washington doesn't solve this with a real outside signing over the next 2 weeks, and the internal replacement collapses at some point this season, this becomes the first roster construction call the public actually holds against Peters since he arrived in Washington. I hope I'm wrong about this one, because it would mean Coleman answered the bell at the level this team needs. And here's the part I really want you to understand, because it directly affects this season's whole project. Washington made the conference championship game in 2024. Last year, 2025, they finished 5-12, literally crushed by injuries, more than 30 different players missing playing time per Athlon Sports reporting. This camp's whole storyline was clear. This franchise was ready to leave that ghost behind and build on the 2024 momentum. Losing Tunsil in the first week of pads against the same $100 million player they signed to reinforce the defense is exactly the kind of cruel gut punch this fanbase already knows too well. I'm not going to pretend this doesn't worry me. It worries me a lot. But I've also seen this roster respond under pressure before, and the depth Adam Peters built this offseason, signing linemen like Daniel Brunskill and Nicolas Petit-Frere just days before this injury, suddenly looks like a downright prophetic front office decision, almost like somebody in that building knew this could happen. Okay, and in case the Tunsil drama wasn't enough for one weekend, Dan Quinn also confirmed updates on 2 other starters currently off the field. Listen closely here, because this connects directly to everything we just covered about the offensive line. Nick Allegretti, Washington's projected starting center, suffered a calf strain on the very first padded practice of camp and has been out since. Quinn confirmed he'll likely miss about another week. In his absence, Julian Good-Jones has been taking first-team reps, a player with exactly 2 career NFL snaps to his name. The only other center on the roster is Matt Gulbin, a 6th-round rookie. And here's a detail that tells you the organization isn't panicking about this one. Per ESPN, Quinn himself said that because they don't view Allegretti's situation as long-term, the team isn't in the market for another veteran at that spot. Listen to me here. The depth at center on this offensive line is, to put it kindly, razor thin, and the decision not to go shopping there while actively evaluating outside help at left tackle tells me the internal medical read on Allegretti is a lot more optimistic than the one on Tunsil. And this matters so much more now that Washington is also reshuffling left tackle, because communication between the center and the left tackle on protections is one of the most critical pieces of the entire offensive scheme. Losing clarity there, at the same time you're losing clarity over there, is a quiet perfect storm nobody's talking about nearly enough. And then there's John Bates, the starting tight end, who strained his hamstring Thursday during practice and will be out, in Dan Quinn's own words, for a couple of weeks. Bates is widely considered one of the best blocking tight ends in the entire league, a piece David Blau specifically needs, because the expectation for this offense in 2026 is to run more 12 personnel packages, meaning 2 tight ends on the field at once. Without Bates, that plan gets compromised in the early weeks of camp, right when the most reps are needed to install the new scheme. The good news, and there is one here, is that the depth behind Bates is genuinely interesting. Chig Okonkwo, Ben Sinnott, and Colson Yankoff are soaking up those extra reps, and Sinnott in particular, a 2nd-round pick from 2 years ago who hasn't broken out yet, now has the perfect opportunity to prove why Washington spent that draft capital on him. If Sinnott takes advantage of these weeks, we could be watching the birth of an expanded role for him this season, regardless of when Bates gets back. My honest read on this is simple. Neither of these 2 injuries is, on its own, cause for panic. These are the kind of minor bumps every NFL camp absorbs every single August. The problem is the context they're arriving in. When your starting left tackle is already out for surgery, every additional loss on the offensive line and at positions that depend on direct communication with it feels 10 times heavier than it would in a normal year. Washington has until the first week of September to solve this puzzle, and trust me, the coaching staff knows that better than anyone. And to close things out, fam, I've got the news this heavy weekend genuinely needed. Trey Amos is back on the field, and the signs point toward him being ready for Week 1 against Philadelphia. Quick recap for anyone who missed the road here. Amos, last year's 2nd-round cornerback, put together a genuinely solid rookie season, starting the first 10 games, 8 of them as a starter, racking up 32 tackles and 6 pass breakups before fracturing his right fibula in Week 10 against the Detroit Lions. He missed the rest of the season. He missed all of this spring's OTAs and minicamp. And when camp opened on July 25th, Washington rightfully placed him on the physically unable to perform list, taking 0 risk with a player of this caliber. This past Thursday, Amos passed his physical and was activated alongside edge rusher Dorrance Armstrong and punter Tress Way. Friday, he practiced in full, taking reps with the first team. And before Washington took the field Saturday, the same day as the Tunsil disaster by the way, Dan Quinn publicly said he expects AMOS to be ready for the start of the regular season. Now, why does this comeback excite me beyond the obvious? Because a healthy AMOS completely changes the dynamic of this secondary. He's a physical presence on the boundary, sturdy against the run with an anticipation skill that goes beyond what you'd expect from a second-year player. With Marshawn Lattimore, Mike Sainristil, and the veteran insurance policy Washington signed this offseason in Rasul Douglas, the entire secondary looks completely different with AMOS available from day one compared to starting the year without him. And I want to be straight with you on something here because lazy analysis would just be celebrating and moving on. Washington's caution with AMOS, keeping him under strict observation almost 9 months after the original injury before letting him practice with contact, tells me the medical staff isn't taking any unnecessary risk with a leg bone that already broke once. That's exactly what I want to see from an organization that already lived through injury hell last season. Don't rush anybody. Confirm every step. And that's why when Dan Quinn himself finally comes out and says out loud that he expects to see AMOS in week 1, that comment carries a lot more weight than if he'd said it back in July. My prediction, with a date attached, Trey Amos starts in week 1 against Philadelphia on September 7th and finishes the regular season with at least 3 interceptions. I could be wrong if there's any setback over the next few weeks of preseason, but everything we've seen so far points that direction. And there you have it, fam. A weekend of pure contrast for this franchise. We lost the man protecting Jaden Daniels' blindside for at minimum most of the season, and that genuinely hurts. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that for anybody. The offensive line now has 3 significant names off the field at the same time between Tunsil, Allegretti, and Bates, and the next month is going to determine whether Adam Peters goes to the open market for veteran help or fully trusts the depth he already built at home. But we also got back a cornerback who can raise the entire ceiling of this secondary, and that combination, real pain plus real hope, is exactly what being a fan of this team means. Washington is still Washington. Burgundy and gold is still burgundy and gold. Jaden Daniels still hasn't hit his ceiling, and this offense with Diggs, with Terry McLaurin, with Bill Krosky-Merritt running the ball, still has enough talent to compete even while reshuffling the line over the next few weeks. This franchise has survived far tougher things than one complicated August. If this video gave you real context, no filler, and no excuses, hit that like button right now and subscribe so you don't miss how this offensive line puzzle gets solved in the coming days. And tell me down in the comments, do you trust Brandon Coleman as the starting left tackle, or do you think Adam Peters needs to go get somebody from outside like Taylor Decker? I want to read every single answer. Raise hail always. See you in the next one.